To my shock, I received a query. It's the one time in my life, my entire life, that I got a query for coming to criticize government policy when I was governor. And the person who gave that query is sitting in this room. He was former Secretary of the Government of the Federation, Senator Anyim Pius Anyim, who insists that he was only carrying out instructions. But since I see him, I keep reminding him every time, he's the one man that gave me a query in my life for criticizing government policy. So, Senator, it's good to see you. And I will continue, as I've always done, to commend government on the right policies and also point out areas of improvement. And the way we're going to continue to make progress in this country as leaders is to be able to introspect, to self-criticize, and to look for people who actually tell us what we need to do better. I think when we talk about leadership, the worst leaders are those who are surrounded by praise singers. And I think we are fast becoming a country now where we tend to tell our leaders what they want to hear rather than what they need to hear. I hope today at the various panels on leadership, we will continue to do what is right, tell the leaders what they're doing right, tell them what you think they're doing wrong, suggest to them areas of improvement. I'll stop here and hand over to my senior and leader at Peterside, who was my prefect when I was in Form 1 in King's College, and he was the most wicked prefect you could ever think about. And he also claims that he was wicked to me, and if he was not wicked to me, I would not have turned out as well as I did. So he takes responsibility for. Thank you very much.
Let's appreciate him, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. The Emir of Kano, we thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Honorable Minister for Finance and the Coordinating Minister, I'm glad to see that you're alive and well after all the rumors. Of course, I will not respond to the comments made by the co-chair because everybody knows that the only way to bring up young rascals is to discipline them early. Then they become perfect gentlemen. I advise you as well that use that same principle when dealing with your children. Then, of course, why are we here? I'll come now to our big, wonderful hostess, Aruma Ote. I don't know why all of you are here, but I know why I'm here. I'm here because Aruma bullied me to come here. She didn't give me a choice. She pestered me and harassed me to the point where I decided that it was easier to attend and do her bidding than to incur her wrath. So as those who know her very well know that the fear of Aruma is the beginning of wisdom. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will just make a few comments, and because I want the discussions proper to commence. The thing I like about this particular event is the introduction of the word leadership. Because I think Africa's biggest problem has been the failure of leadership. What separates Africa from many other continents is not colonialism, because they had that in Asia as well. Even within Africa, what separates some countries like Rwanda is leadership. And I think leadership failure has been Africa's portion. And I know that the focus here is on Nigeria, but I want us to really ask ourselves, because people in this room are part of what I was called the top 1% of Nigerians. in almost all respects, definitely in terms of income and other things. So what is it that we need to do to ensure that we have good leadership? Please, if you notice, I'm talking broadly. I didn't say leadership only in Nassau Rock. I'm talking about leadership across the entire spectrum. What makes some countries in Europe function, what makes some in Asia function, is good leaders at various levels. In China, you cannot appear at the very top unless you have been a good leader, a proven leader at various levels earlier. In Nigeria, somebody who has been a failure all his life will suddenly find himself being uplifted and given a leadership position that he barely understands. Now, we can excuse the days of the military, and I actually love the fact that there are several past very senior military rulers, including some who have been head of state, who actually confess that the problem they see is that it was about 5-10 years after they were in their highest position of authority that they now actually became ready to be leaders. So they were thrust into a position of leadership at the time when they knew little or nothing and were not even remotely prepared. Now, if you can blame the military for that, but since the return of democracy, the leadership that we get at all levels is in the hands of the Nigerian people. So we must take responsibility. If in my LGA there is poor leadership, I must be partly responsible, because part of my contribution to Nigeria is supposed to help to ensure that we get good leadership at all levels. So ladies and gentlemen, I will just stop there and talk. So what have I said? There's a leadership challenge. And if the only thing that this conference ends up doing is helping us to make significant progress, building a consensus in our thoughts as to how or what we have to do to get the right kind of leadership. And for the avoidance of doubt, even what Aroma has done today is one way of showing leadership. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. And Atido Peterside talked that leaders are groomed, they are prepared, they are trained. And this is the beginning of their training. So very well done, and also very well done to the young people from the various schools. Panel and list of people that will be able to learn from. And so it is an occasion for dialogue. It's an occasion for interaction. His Highness had said, look, that government has to be able to listen, has to be able to listen to take the praise, has to be able to listen to where suggestions are being made for improvement. And I think it's a fair comment. Today we are talking about leadership, and I'll just briefly say that, yes, Africa, with all its human resources, and of course, that is the most important resource that Africa has now. We are going to be the world's workforce. Africa will provide, by 2050 or so, 25% of the world's workforce. We are the young continent compared to the aging continents of Asia, aging continents of Europe. So we have to prepare ourselves for that historic role. In Nigeria, leadership changed in 2023, and under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, it changed for the better. If you look at the record, if you look at the statistics, if you look at the progress that has been made since 2023. However, the statistics, the improved growth rate, the stable exchange rate, the lowering inflation, those are just one side of the story. And the most important aspect is the human side, the effect on people's daily experience, the cost of food, the cost of transport, how they are living their lives. And it is to that I think, rather than focusing on the various statistics, what I will say is that there is an attempt to ensure that the pains of reform have immediately been alleviated. And that's why there is in place a transparent, accountable, and robust system of providing direct payments in the first instance to a total of 15 million households. And you know, in the holding area, before we joined this gathering, there were comments that in their villages, in their towns, they had not had reports of anybody receiving those payments. So immediately, we called for the data, and shortly we'll give them the data of the people that have received first, second, and/or third payments directly, because each individual is identified by their NIN, by their national identity number, and they are paid digitally, either to their bank account or to their mobile wallet. So there's accountability, transparency, there's a record. Of course, we would like to roll out an even bigger program of direct payments, but that's a key part of alleviating and ensuring that the reforms also produce gains right down to the lowest levels. And I will augment that particular item of reaching the poorest and the most vulnerable, and even as many people lower down the ladder, by saying that just recently, the National Economic Council, and with His Excellency Mr. President also giving his weight, his approval, and his patronage to a system of ward-based development. So there is in place a ward-based development program that will take resources, that will take information, that will take funding to the 8,809 wards in the 774 local governments. And this will be a way of empowering economically active people at the ward level. Small businesses, cottage industries, they will be helped, they will be supported, they will be financed, they will be funded. And that is a key element in ensuring that the benefits of the reform that is going on now in Nigeria and the improvements reach right down to the world level. And I think when we look at what we heard from the young people today, they talked about empathy, they talked about integrity, they talked about love, and they talked about responsibility. And I think that way of thinking is certainly the way that we want our young leaders thinking. We want them to be caring. We want them to be responsible. We want them to be thinking for the many rather than the few. And essentially, I think in Nigeria of today, the emphasis is not just And it was pointed out in our conversations, it is not just on the figures, the growth figures, and so on and so forth. More importantly, it is about reaching the people right down at the world level and assisting them to be able to prosper, to be able to produce more, and to be able to lead better lives. So on that note, Ms. Aruma-Ote, I congratulate you on this all-important conference, and on your behalf, I thank so many distinguished people who have come here to identify with you, to be part of this, and to be part of the conversation about the all-important item of leadership in Nigeria, leadership in Africa. I thank you.
So, Kade, it's over to you. You want this?
One that I find very interesting and very exciting. And the panelists are outstanding human beings, not just Nigerians. Wherever I see them, whether I find them in America, in Europe, in anywhere in the world, they're still very outstanding. So please, another round of applause for them and the person who has brought us here. Attributes of economic statesmanship: courage to act, patience to sequence, and integrity to sustain reform, be out so that everybody gets to hear what's the objective of this conversation. And when I remembered that His Royal Highness, 2011, 12, 13, and I also remember that at that time I was the general manager of a different television station. Before we talk about the end results, I'd like us to just dig in for a few years, at least over a decade back. We'll start with you, sir, Mr. Atado Peterside. I'll quote your words to you. What you said in 2012, and I'd like everybody to listen to what Mr. Atado Peterside said. He said the level of ignorance in this country is amazingly high. Of the 203 billion additional revenue which will accrue to the LGAs on account of the removal of subsidy, Kano State, he said, LGAs in Kano alone will get the highest of 11.7 billion. This was in 2012. So instead of the people of Kano demanding for their 11.7 billion for their LGAs, they are abusing His Royal Highness sitting beside me here, who's the central bank governor at that time, for arguing to bring them an extra 11.7 billion, an amount which would otherwise have been consumed largely in Lagos and neighboring countries. Now, let me ask you, sir, as a starting point, we have seen that this government has moved things. The needle has moved, has shifted. A number of people, including His Royal Highness, commended the moves in terms of removal of subsidy, the leadership quality required to change the narrative in terms of subsidy. He said it was a good move by the president. What would you do differently, considering the fact that what you advocated about 12, 13 years ago has been activated and has been commended by His Royal Highness? But yet, the people are crying, and I'm a journalist. I talk to a lot of people, and their response has been, we're hungrier and poorer and more impoverished than ever. What would you do differently as a leader if you had the mantle of power? Let's start from there, sir.
I hope this microphone is good enough. Or should I use your microphone? I don't know which one.
Oh, that will be good.
Yes, sir. You know, I'm somebody whom I believe in speaking the truth all the time. So you're quoting me in 2012. You can quote me in 2025. The issues will not change. I'm not one of those people when you're out of government, you fight against fuel subsidy. When you're in government, you advocate fuel subsidy. That's part of Nigeria's and Africa's problem. People take positions not based on the truth, but based on what a personal agenda they are pursuing. So I'll be the first one to give credit to this government for removing the fuel subsidy, which some of us started calling for from the very first economic summit over 30 years ago. But the same president must take the blame for sabotaging the efforts to remove the fuel subsidy in the past, in 2012. The speeches are there. So, but you know, they say it's the best time to have planted a tree was 25 years ago. The second best time is now. So let's focus on the now. The important thing is that the government has done the correct thing in terms of removing an unaffordable subsidy. The same government has done the correct thing, which has been done before, to give us what I will consider to be largely market-determined exchange rates, which gives you some exchange rate stability. So you asked me, what would I have done differently? That question shows so I think anybody with the right brain on his head would have done those two things. But guess what? How long does it take to do those things? I can mention previous central bank governors. On a particular day, Abdulkadir Ahmed moved the exchange rate from 1 to 1 to 4 to 1. There was market-determined exchange rates. On the different day, the exchange rate moved from 8 to 1 to 18 to 1, and we had equilibrium. Under past CBN governors like my friend here, we had market-determined exchange rates largely. So that's a one-day action. You bite the bullets on the first day. What differentiates you thereafter is your subsequent actions. So those measures improve fiscal balance. They give all three tiers of government so much more revenue. And that's where the problem starts. What is the point of giving a thief more revenue if he's only going to steal it? So across all the local governments of Nigeria, across every state government, and at the federal level, the real test is what is being done with that revenue in their hands. Is that revenue supposed to be used to fuel 400 cars to escort the president to the airport and burn all the revenue in the process? Is that what you did it for? Let me tell you what the correct thing was. The real difficulty, the real action, the real result was to help to eliminate poverty, was to get the economy functioning. As soon as you did those two things, which could be done, each of them, it takes a day, an announcement, it's your subsequent actions. When the economic summit turned 25 years, I was in this same room. I recommended that the government then should remove fuel subsidy. I also said, but as soon as you do it, the following day, even the day before, start distributing cash to the poorest Nigerians. They all have names. The national ID card is a payment-enabled instrument. If you gave every poor person in Nigeria, poor adult, 5,000 naira, and you remove subsidy, for a man who was getting zero, he's just received 5,000. So, but if you remove the subsidy, the finance minister is right. They gave, I think it was 8 million people have received transfers. What is 8 million out of 230 million? That's where the problem is. There are countries where when they did their cash transfers, it was to all the poor people in the country immediately. So I'm answering your question only, what should have been done differently? I'm not saying it's achievable in 24 hours. But these are the things that have caused the pain. And all this talk about, after the pain comes the gain. It is true if after the pain, you carry out all the other supporting reforms to improve efficiency, improve government spending. People talked about trying to implement, to eliminate wastage and so on. But if after the pain, what you do is to continue reckless spending that is going on all over the nation, then that pain can go on forever. So it's not true that gain follows pain. Gain follows pain only if you are doing the right things after putting the pain in place. And it's the same too with the exchange rate. So now, we have an economic system. I'll be fair. This economy works very well for people who are friends of the government because they can invest, and when the obstacles come, they have the clout to negotiate their way through all those obstacles. But we want an economy where you don't need to know the government to invest here and do business. Now, I'm not criticizing this government. This was the challenge that any and every government that took those measures was supposed to address immediately after. So I can clap for you for market-determined exchange rates. I can clap for you for removing fuel subsidy. Those are one-day actions. If you want me to keep on clapping for you, show me the rest of your actions after those two things. Because those are the things that make the big difference between investor confidence, creating an environment where people feel they can invest, you're looking after the poor, and all the supportive things that were required. So I will just stop there, but let me just warn you, Mr. Moderator. On this panel, I'm the oldest person. So it doesn't matter what you ask me, I will answer what I want to answer. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, sir. I will let you. Let me come to this side then. Thank you, Mr. Atado Peterside. I have great respect for you, and I love the way your mind works and the fact that you speak truth to power. At all times, in all the years that I've been in this country, I've never known a time that you shied away from speaking the truth, no matter whose ox is caught. So please, another round of applause for Mr. Atado Peterside. Your Highness, I remember in those days when you were the CBN governor, we know all the conversation that you had about this same issue, and the fact that what is required was the leadership to take the right action, and like Mr. Atado Peterside said just now, not just the one-day action, but the policies and processes that follow, making sure they are executed. In fact, I remember there was a specific time that you said, you've done your best with monetary policy, and that's your job as the CBN governor. The rest of it is left in the hands of those who are politicians, and I think that was part of the reason you said you got a query from the SGF. So you got a query at that point, and it led to so many other things. But let me ask you, sir. Now, in terms of those in power in Nigeria listening, several Nigerians commended the position of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, when he appointed both Mr. Wale Edun and Mr. Yemi Cardoso. They said these are some of the best brains and best minds, and yet we're in a situation where people are crying. Is it that Nigerians, and I would refer to even the time of President Jonathan, some of the best brains, including the likes of Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, including the likes of even my dear sister and friend here, Aruma Ote, were in government and working for government agencies. Is it that the people at the helm of leadership in Nigeria just consistently don't listen to advice and fail to do the right thing beyond the one single action that Mr. Atado Peterside described as 24-hour decision?
Thank you very much, Kaide. Well, first of all, let me say that it's extremely important for us to try to understand economics and how the economy works. And a failure to understand economics sometimes leads to misplaced expectations. There's a role for the central bank. There's a role for the Ministry of Finance. You've got monetary policy, you have fiscal policy, you have structural policies, you have institutional reforms. And yes, I was one of those who commended the appointment of Wale Edun and Yemi Cardoso. These are two gentlemen that I've known for many years, and I have never had any question about their competence. And if you try to assess them, you've got to ask, what were they supposed to achieve? Okay. Now, going back to the beginning, you talk about 2012. And you talk about the suffering from removal of subsidy. It's simple arithmetic. If you're paying 80 naira or 65 naira per liter, and you begin to pay 160 naira per liter, costs will go up. There will be hardship. And the duty of leaders is to understand that there will be a cost to removing subsidy. And I said in 2012, if you remember from the town hall meeting, to say that there will be hardship is not an economic argument. To say that there will be a cost to removing subsidy is not an economic argument. The economic argument is, this is the cost of removing the subsidy. What is the cost of not removing the subsidy? Are you making a choice? We were in a situation where we had a hedge that we called, it was not a subsidy, it was a hedge. You see, a subsidy by definition, the government says, I will pay X% of the price. That is a subsidy. I'll pay 20% of the price, whatever it is. Price goes up, you pay more, I pay more. Price goes down, you pay less, I pay less. What we had in this country is what in risk management you call a naked hedge, the worst possible derivative you can have. The government said to Nigerians, 200 million Nigerians, you will not pay more than X amount per liter on petrol, no matter what the price of petrol is. So all price goes up from $40 to $140, the federal government pays the difference. Exchange rate moves from 155 to 300, the government pays the difference. Interest rates move from 5% to 15%, the government pays it. Remember, the price of petrol and what the calculations include the cost of crude, the cost of refined product, the cost of transportation, even interest rates, demurrage. If you look at the template, all of those amounts were being absorbed. The federal government was saying, I have an unlimited pocket. So we moved from a point where we were using revenues to pay subsidy to where we had to borrow money to pay subsidy, to where we had to borrow money to pay interest on the borrowed money. We had become bankrupt. Anyone who takes a naked hedge ends up being bankrupted, especially with a commodity where you don't control the price. So this was the point in 2012. Now, if Nigerians had allowed the Jonathan government to remove the subsidy in 2011, there would have been pain. But that pain would have been a very, very tiny fraction of what we are facing today. This is the cost of delay. At that time, we worked out the numbers in the central bank, and I stood up and put my credibility on the line and said, remove the subsidy today, inflation moves up from 11% to 13%. I will bring it down in a year. We will not have had 30-something% inflation. Okay? That was where we were. Now, people like my friend Kaide Fayemi here and his APC friends had Occupy Nigeria, came out on the streets, told us we could not do it. And I remember calling one of my friends. And this is, we should talk about these things because it's important. There's a kind of poetic justice. That it is actually the people who led the Occupy Nigeria movement who ended up seeing the problem, inheriting the problem, and having to do it. And I remember calling one of my friends at that time and said, look, one of my closest friends said, you know that what we're doing is right. He said, yes, I know. I said, why? He said, well, I'm in opposition. My job is to make the government look bad. You know, you are the governor of central bank, you go and defend your government. Just politics. And you know, the only reason the government compromised at that time, maybe we should know this, the only reason the government compromised and did 50% to 100% was Boko Haram. Because there were thousands of Nigerians on the streets in Lagos and Kano and Kaduna and all that. At the time when we had suicide bombers in the country. And there was a fear. If one day one of these suicide bombers goes to these Nigerians and explodes the bomb and you have 200 corpses, it will no longer be about subsidy. So you have to give President Jonathan the credit. He was determined to do it, but at the end of the day, the compromise was made, okay, to save Nigerian lives. Now, what has the central bank achieved? Central bank's role is to provide stability. The central bank does not deliver growth. It does not deliver employment. It provides an environment that is conducive to growth. Okay? Now, and the central bank has achieved it. You don't want inflation moving from 10% to 15% to 20% to 25%, because, as I said a few weeks ago at NESG, Nigerians don't realize that we were on the brink of hyperinflation. Beyond a certain rate of inflation, it becomes runaway inflation. You can't control it. You'd buy rice in the morning. By the time you come at 12 noon, the price has changed. By 4 p.m., it has changed. This is what happened in Zimbabwe. It happened in Venezuela. It happened in Argentina. We were heading for Nigeria. We were printing money like there was no tomorrow. We're heading for Nigeria. We're heading in the direction of Zimbabwe under Mugabe, or Uganda under Idi Amin. So inflation has been reined in. The runaway devaluation has been stopped. Yes, we're at 1,400. Nobody wants an naira at 1,400. But it's better to know that it will be 1,400 for the next 6 months, 8 months, 10 years, than to think it's 1,400 today, 2,000 tomorrow, 2,500, which is really... So the central bank's job is not to give you a strong naira. The central bank's job is not to give you low prices. The central bank's job is to reduce the volatility in the price level. And so when you assess the central bank, you've got to say, what has it done? Have you reduced volatility inflation? Have you brought it down? We're going to bring it down to single digit. You're on your way. There's still a long way to go. Okay, I would like to see inflation come down to under 10%. It will take time. But in terms of stopping it from runaway, it has. Exchange rate volatility has been reduced. Now, on the fiscal side, and we talk about tax reforms, those reforms, the Tax Act only takes off next year. So we must remember that before the tax reforms have kicked in, we have increased government revenues. We have brought down debt service ratios from 100 and something percent to about 40%. Okay, so on the revenue side, you've got to give the finance ministry credit for what it's done. Now, is there more to do? Yes. And the way where the problem is what Atedo has mentioned, is the expenditure side.
Yes.
Okay? The quality of spending. And some of these things, we've got to be honest with ourselves. Look, why do we need 48 ministers? Why do we need dozens of vehicles when we're moving around in convoys or traveling all over the country?
So, Your Highness, that brings me to that question which I'm asking, which is, do we have an affliction that affects the hearing of our leaders and unable to listen to the good advice?
No, I mean...
If we have an affliction, we'll get a doctor to fix it.
Yes, so your question started with the finance minister and central bank governor, and we're saying that there are things that are beyond them when you're dealing with the economy. So I would go along with that and say you've got to look at overheads. You've got to look at things like your contract processing, procurement process, okay? There's still questions about inflated contracts. There are questions about transparency. There are questions, all this money is coming into the federal, and this at federal, state, and local level, there are serious questions about how the money that is being raised is being used. And the arithmetic is simple. If you stop paying subsidy, why are we still borrowing more? Because if you've filled a hole, we should have the revenue to fund expenditure. But we fill in one hole and dig in a bigger hole. So this government needs to look at institutions. It needs to look at the quality of spending. It needs to understand that if you keep making more money and keep blowing it away, you're going to undo what you have done. But apart from that, I think a lot of good has been done, okay? But we still have to look at what needs to
Okay, I would ask this question, Your Royal Highness, one more time. And I hope I get a straight answer to it. Nigerian leaders, from as long as I can remember since I've been in this country, they seem to not be listening to wise counsel. Even the man that you said was President Jonathan at the time had the good counsel to say, no matter what happens with Boko Haram and the rest of them, this is wise counsel, not just from the then SLS governor of CBN, from a great mind like Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. Everybody said this is the right thing. In fact, I remember you mentioned on Channels Television, where I was the GM then, that we're on the precipice, about to fall. You said it. So why will that president not take the right action? And then the one after, and now the one that is there now, knowing what the answers are from the experts, the likes of Wale Edun, the likes of Yemi Cardoso, and all the other brilliant minds that are working with him. Why are they not doing it?
Look, in fairness,
affliction or what? I asked the question one more time because we have to move on.
On this question, in fairness to Jonathan, he took the right decision. And look, I'm not a fan of Jonathan. He suspended me from my job, okay? Okay? But you have to commend him, okay? President Jonathan took the advice and agreed to remove subsidy. As a government, we all agreed to remove the subsidy, and we're determined to remove the subsidy. The only reason we stopped at 50%, like I said, was the threat to people's lives. Now, but to your question, why do Nigerian leaders not listen? What my experience, okay, with talking to many of the leaders is they listen to so many people, and they decide that they're going to accept those that tell them what they want to hear. We have too many sycophants in government. Look, you need to, when I got to, you sit in a meeting and the president is there and people are speaking, and the first thing they say is, Mr. President, I would like to thank you for your leadership to this country. In fact, you know, God has blessed Nigeria by making us your leader. If you were not there, I don't know where we would be. By the time these people lay this foundation, it is their advice that the president takes. Okay? People like me who would say, Mr. President, there are some things that are wrong. When you leave, they say you are his enemy. Okay? So the problem is that when leaders allow themselves to be surrounded by praise singers and by sycophants, they never get good advice. So people like Atedo and myself are always enemies of state because people don't like hearing the bad news. There was nothing we didn't say to Buhari about printing money, about ways and means, about the exchange rate, about subsidy. But every time you spoke about the economy, it was seen as a personal attack against the president. And there were people around him who convinced him that this person is your enemy. That's why he's saying this. Okay. So we need to begin to ask as leaders, who do we surround ourselves with? And please, those who are ministers and those who speak to the president, it is not to your benefit to turn yourselves, you disgrace yourselves, you debase yourselves by turning yourselves into praise singers.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Yanis. We have very little time, but I'm going to crave your indulgence to extend by a few more minutes because I've not even asked the convener of this meeting any question at all. So the first question I will ask you will be that you've heard what Mr. Atedo Peterside said and you've heard His Royal Highness. And I noticed that the first thing you did this morning was to bring the next generation of leaders onto this platform to speak. And I have a number of friends who are doing the same thing, thinking that we have to look at the next generation. You said a book, which I saw last night when we were having dinner, you said all hands on deck. And I'm thinking, how do we get all hands on deck when there is no succession plan for the young people to take over? And I'll give you just one example. I think it was you and I that had a chat yesterday or the day before, and we're talking about a young man brilliant, very intelligent young man that had a chance to be in one of the states in the North Central to get a ticket. And this young man was deprived of the opportunity to get a ticket because they said there was somebody else, much older, that has been in the system for much longer, that they had to give the ticket to, despite the fact that this guy was brilliantly positioned to do a great job. So help us understand, how do we bring all hands on deck for the future of the nation so that we have the right kind of leadership that we have been craving for the last 65 years?
Well, first of all, since this is the first time I'm speaking, and I may not have a chance to share some thoughts more generally, so just permit me to first of all just welcome everybody, but also just say thank you to each one of you who shares the vision of Oxford Global Think Tank, which is to have a non-partisan focus on how we can unleash more globally, unleash the potential of society. But I think our country, Nigeria, is a great example of what the possibilities are when we take collective responsibility, when all hands are on deck. In putting together this conference, we really focused on a number of things. One of them was all hands on deck, which is why you have an economic leaders panel, you have a public sector leaders panel, you have future leaders, emerging leaders, male leadership, female leadership, because at Oxford Global Think Tank, we do think that we need to continue to focus, as the Honorable Minister of Finance shared with us some of the work that they're doing, on inclusive approaches. We need to build a bigger pie, and we need to make sure that pie is available for everybody to participate in. We do also believe that technology will accelerate growth, and so we've also curated a focus on technology. I also want to make a second point, and then I will respond to your question. The second point is that the choice of presenting this book, which was published at the beginning of this year, All Hands on Deck, was very intentional on my part. And I was privileged that the authors in the UK accepted the title that I chose, which is All Hands on Deck. Because one of the things, and I'm obviously, I obviously drank the Kool-Aid of capital markets, because I started my life as a young woman at dinner with my parents, and they were invested in the likes of Unilever, Nestle, and those kinds of institutions, and they were not finance experts. And some of what paid for my school fees were dividends at the end and capital gains. So I started very early, from age 8, understanding the value of capital markets. So one thing for me is the call to action for us to leverage the capital markets more. Fortunately, we have an Honorable Minister of Finance, who set up a business. I think people were co-founders of IBTC. He set up a business in investment banking. One of the things that will help our nation is a focus on reasonably priced, long-term patient capital. And so part of what I advocate for is creating the environment that allows us to have long-term patient capital that is available to businesses, that is available to government. And when I say available to government, the current government, previous governments have invested in infrastructure, but we can do much more. And forgive me, I will sing my governor, the governor of Abia State, because I haven't told people why I'm singing him, because I think he recognizes the importance of infrastructure. Because you're not going to move goods to market, people are not going to move, and we need to invest in infrastructure in this nation. I was looking at data as I was thinking about this conference, and China, over the years, invested 24% of its GDP in infrastructure. At best, we do 4 to 5%. If we want to bridge the infrastructure deficit in our nation, we would have to do at least 12%. So there's some foundational things we'll do. Fortunately, as has been pointed out by Mr. Peterside and the Emir, yes, the central bank, the Ministry of Finance are doing their best. But we need to scale. We need to do much more. And we need to raise money so that small businesses can do better, so that the government can do more. And we as individuals need to invest in our nation. And that's why the title All Hands on Deck. The second point I want to make was Oxford Global Think Tank chose to do its first report on reforming the African minerals sector to prosper Africa. We were intentional in choosing that because we have to diversify the economy. I mean, Nigeria, I'm told, has 40 minerals. And Dr. Fayemi, you were Minister of Solid Minerals, and we were in Cairo together a few days ago, and you were telling me some of the things that you had done to try and do better in terms of the mineral sector in Nigeria. But there are 40 minerals that we can exploit in commercial quantities. Why aren't we exploiting those 40 minerals in commercial quantities? Why are minerals still in the exclusive list of the federal government? Why can't we have it be decentralized so that every state can produce the minerals in their own state? Why aren't we decentralizing a nation of 230 million people? I see Dr. Lugbenga Adeshina here, who lives in Cape Verde. There are 500,000 people living in Cape Verde. And we have states that are bigger than 500,000. There's no state that is smaller than 500,000. So why can't we decentralize the management of things, including our mineral sector, so that we can diversify this economy, so that we can have more of a revenue base? The Minister of Budget and Planning had talked, Honorable Minister, about the point you made about the ward development project. I applaud you for the ward development project. What I understand is that the idea is that for every ward, you'll focus on the business opportunities in that ward. So we'll be watching to see that you will implement that initiative. I think it's an absolutely laudable initiative. To take a minute or two on your question, I think that we need a whole rethink. One of the things that we talk about at the Oxford Global Think Tank is what truly leadership means. And I am very clear about what leadership means. I'm lucky, and I think most Nigerians are lucky, because Nigerian parenting teaches you values that you can use to be the greatest leader on earth. So over the years, I've thought about what are my leadership principles? My leadership principles are having character, having compassion, being competent, being the best at what I do, and finally, having courage to do the right thing all the time. I do believe that if we have leadership that focuses on that, we'll focus on making sure that our best and brightest are the ones that come up. We will stand aside so that the younger people will be able to take office. We will bring them on board because they have just as much a stake in this nation as we all have. And part of what we want to do is, by example, to showcase what we would like to see. And that's why it was important for us to have young people. I think we have about 100 young people in the room, students, as well as secondary school students, as well as university students. But I'm a proud federal government girls of Owerri College. So pro unitate to all of us. Thank you.
See, there's a big mistake we are making when we're talking about reforms. People think it's about macro policy, central banking, finance. The number one difference is sincerity. Did the leader come to serve, or did he come to steal? The biggest threat to economic reform in Nigeria, in my entire adult life, have been two things: corruption and state capture. So when the Emir of Kano is saying that you're advising people, listen, I confess, Papayo Sanyim was there. In Jonathan's government, I know Jonathan would like me saying it. I was on the economic team. Half the time, when I was arguing about what should be done for the economy and for Nigeria, people in the villa told me to my hearing, You see, if we listen to everything that Tudor is saying, we came in here poor, we will leave poor. He's saying these things because he already has money. So it's not that people don't know the correct things. Let's not deceive ourselves. Corruption and state capture is driving people to pursue policies that give them a chance to capture an increasing slice of what belongs to everybody for themselves. So they are deliberately, so even when the Emir of Kano goes to advise, he said the former president Buhari, and he leaves, there are people around him who know why they want a different policy. And it's about state capture and corruption. Let's call a spade a spade. The biggest difference between, I'm told by those from Abia, I'm not from your state, but Nigeria is an open society. People from Abia tell me that the biggest difference between this governor and the past, he's the only one that came to serve. I don't know whether it's true or not, but let's just imagine it is true. So if somebody did not come to serve, and you're talking about fiscal and monetary reform, the guy came to steal. So forget it. As he increased the revenue for everybody, he hijacks the bulk of it. Haven't we seen governors in this current regime who have taken the extra revenue to go and buy luxury SUVs for MS and so on? Is that what the revenue is for? I'm not saying you're a beneficiary. So don't be afraid. So the point I'm making is that, and the finance minister is not the one in charge. He cannot stop a governor from taking the increased revenue from all these good measures and misusing it. These are some of these states. Education they met there is a disaster. In the first 2 years hence, they've done nothing to improve education, but they've bought luxury SUVs for all kinds of people. So it's about state capture and corruption. Did somebody come to serve? If you didn't come to serve, forget it. Now, it's not a Nigerian problem. All over Africa, including, let me not name too many countries, but many of the leaders did not come to serve. They came to capture what belongs to everybody. That's for the common good, for themselves and a narrow elite. Until we solve that problem, we will remain in this stew. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Your final word on the issue of developing the next generation of leaders and giving them a chance early so that it doesn't keep getting worse. So we got to wrap up now.
I think the point you made about young people saying that there is no elite in Nigeria is extremely important. Because it's Aruma.
Sorry, I'm worrying about the Honorable Minister leaving us.
No, the minister will listen to the emir for 30 seconds. And
no, I wanted him to be here for longer. I wanted him to be here for the book presentations.
Okay.
But I know we've kept him very
All right,
long.
so I'll just, actually the word is that Nigeria is a classless society. If you take the people you call leaders, go to the Senate, go to the House of Reps, you can go and pick 109 Nigerians at random without election. Put them in the Senate chambers, and the results may not be different from what you're getting now. Okay? Because the truth is, you have highly educated people in government, but they behave like illiterates. They forget their education behind. When you talk about praise singing, why would a man who is an educated man, an accomplished man, why would he be a praise singer to anyone? Why would he not be able to face his boss and say, Oga, we're not doing that, this is the truth? And why would a person in authority not have the confidence to listen to those around him and take criticism? Okay. So you've got people who are supposed to be the representatives of the values of society. By the time you become a governor, honestly, you should be beyond looking for money. You have been given an opportunity to take care of the lives of millions of people, to educate children, to save lives, to provide health care, to build infrastructure. All you are thinking of is a car, a house. I mean, are you that cheap? Or some bank account, and you see them, and at the end of the day, they leave office,
After a few years, they die, and the children are fighting over the money. Then they get the money, and then they go on drugs, and everything is wasted. That money would have been better spent educating millions of young people and saving lives. So if we really want to fix this country, we need to have a class. The ruling class needs to have values. Values beyond stomach infrastructure.
Thank you very much. The Honourable Minister's got to go, so I will say thank you very much. I was going to ask my dear sister Aruma Ote to just say one word on the global think tank and one word on the global think tank in Nigeria and how that will make the changes. Thank you. So we got to go.
And former Senate President, Chief Anyim, Pius Anyim. The Honorable Minister and my sister, Doris Anita Ozoka. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me, like we do here, stand or sit on all the protocols that have been established. I, first of all, want to apologize for coming in late. My slot would have been earlier than now, but somehow our flight took off a little late from Imo State. We don't have an airport here in Abia, but we are building one. I'd like to thank Aroma for getting us together here to discuss leadership. I want to, first of all, establish that she's my sister from another mother. Just that she came a few days earlier. And so when she turned 60, in January, she started oppressing me, not recognizing that a month later that I was also going to turn 60. So I also want to thank her for the job she does for the state as the chairperson of the Abia Global Economic Advisory Council. And I'm lucky that the other co-chair is also seated here. Emma Sanusi. Thank you so much. I have a prepared speech which I will crave your indulgence to read, if it is okay. All right. I hope I can be seen, all these microphones. Some of us that came in small sizes. You need to get, you need to consider us, otherwise we'll sue for marginalization. I've titled my speech, "We Truly Can Do Better." We truly can do better. Every society thrives or falls on the strength of the ideas developed and propagated by its thought leaders. The individuals whose opinions direct the ebbs and flows of public conversation, morality, and values. The development gap that exists between nations is clearly not about quantity of mineral resources buried beneath its soil, or the presence or absence of other natural body of advantages. and this is not to make light of part of the objectives of this colloquium today, which is about Africa's mineral resources. But I argue that no matter how much mineral resources you have, if you do not have the right leadership, you will not make a lot of progress. After about 100 years of development studies, it has been proven that natural resources, when not paired with the requisite human intellect to make the most of it, can in itself become an albatross to a society's development aspirations. Everyone in this room knows perhaps a dozen countries around the world that developed with minimal income from crude mineral extraction. In the same vein, I'm also certain that all of us know another dozen countries or more that are blessed with abundant natural resources, and yet genuine development remains elusive. It then follows that prosperity requires more than just huge deposits of raw materials. Long-term progress is initiated and sustained by the discipline of leadership, the power of ideas, and the courage of execution. Development is therefore a human function, a rigorous intellectual exercise, and the end product of a blistered hands. It is not for nothing that societies that seek progress prioritize education and human capital development. For without a critical mass of individuals committed to making the most of the natural resources found within their environment, the largest deposits of precious minerals will only amount to little and could actually trigger undesirable outcomes. The good news, however, is that no matter how far off a society may have strayed from the path of progress, there's always a way back. For no destiny is final, and no course is irreversible. Today, we have gathered for what is effectively a rich festival of ideas and harvest of brilliance in the diverse front lines of human commitments. I'm impressed with the general sense of gratitude in acknowledging that we are a blessed people. It is also noble that even in our gratitude, we have clearly not lost sight of the fact that on several scores, we have betrayed the lofty dreams that inspired our fathers to fight for an independent Nigeria. It is my considered view that we are still not too far gone to rediscover the promise of Nigeria and rise collectively to take our place in destiny. Let me, on this note, thank the founder of the Oxford Global Think Tank, one of our country's brightest experts, Professor Maote, ON, for convening this event and for the excellent use of her platform to consistently point us to the right path. May I use this auspicious occasion to specially appreciate this revolutionary Amazon for her brilliant and peerless contributions to the holistic development of the human community, especially in Nigeria and across Africa. While it is beyond dispute that the former treasurer and vice president of the World Bank has distinguished herself through decades of active leadership and service in development finance, capital market regulation, academia, and human pursuits, her recent gift of a wonderfully written book, All Hands on Deck, Unleash Prosperity Through World-Class Capital Markets, reflects more than anything else her generosity and belief in the power of ideas to transform nations and recover what may have been lost. I was delighted to read through the very critical insights shared in the pages of my sister's new book on how to develop and leverage the capital market to address much of the economic challenges we face as individuals and even more importantly, in the larger society. I like the emphasis on knowledge, understanding how the system works and how nations, organizations, and households can master the flow of the market to grow and preserve wealth across generations. What makes this book truly exceptional is that it was written from a place of experience with important anecdotes that break the technical elements of the discussion down for readers without extensive knowledge of economics and finance. I'm particularly glad that the book offers us a clear path to resource mobilization without the sneers that come from borrowing. I consider the book an excellent treatise on economic freedom, preservation of national sovereignty, and integration of domestic financiers into the development matrix. The new book by Aroma, beyond sharing very incisive thoughts on the pathways to prosperity through the capital market, also presents important leadership lessons and new paradigm for national development. I'm glad that this book is coming at a time when our nation appears to be at a crossroad with millions of people uncertain about the future. This is exactly the point where the author's leadership philosophy, anchored on the 4 C's of character, compassion, competence, and courage, has to be adopted as a national template for leadership. At the heart of our challenge is the dysfunctional leadership recruitment template that promotes chaos and mediocrity. The setbacks we have encountered in recent decades are the natural consequences of treating leadership development as a distant concern. We have ultimately become victims of a system that places scant regard on character, treats compassion as evidence of weakness, mistakes arrogance for competence, and promotes the noisy over the truly courageous. As someone who has sat on very important tables in her long career as a development professional and policymaker, Professor Ote appreciates the pains of missed opportunities, the misery of unrealized potential, and the frustrations of lost momentum. While it would be untrue to suggest that it has been all doom and gloom, one would expect that from the interactions that will take place today and lessons of the new book, we can do much better with the abundance of human and material resources that our country is blessed with. We live in a new era where wealth is tied to knowledge, and there is a lot of advantage for us in this regard. Our people are amongst the most brilliant, innovative, and enterprising individuals in very demanding fields of science, technology, and academia. The human gold mine that you find in Nigeria can effectively transform the social and economic experiences of present and future generations, and ultimately lead the African development renaissance. It does not speak well of our kind that most times the best of us finds the right environment to unleash their brilliance outside our shores. Our route to recovery could actually be found in creating an environment for all of us to thrive right here in our land. This we can do by rebuilding the system to reward excellence, offer equal opportunity to everyone, and create multiple spaces for individuals to live out the full expression of their talents. We may not all agree, but on the evidence of what we have seen in the last 65 years of independence, genuine social and economic development have their foundation in the human mind. Without creating spaces where the mind is nurtured and exposed to noble thoughts, bold ideas, and the higher philosophy of living, all models of development become illusory. This is where education and the structures of learning come into play. Professor Ote is an excellent proof that quality education, especially at the foundational level, can make a world of difference in what a child becomes. I would therefore insist that the key to unlocking our rich but largely dominant human potential is the restoration of standards and values in the education sector. Beyond recruiting quality teachers, upgrading infrastructure, and instilling a strict culture of discipline in the learning environment, we also have to pay attention to the curriculum development. I would like to specially thank the Federal Ministry of Education for the recent changes in basic and secondary education curriculum. But as I have learned in my interactions, developing an excellent body of curriculum is one thing. Effective implementation is another altogether. To achieve the outcome that we seek, we have to be prepared to cover the entire 9 years. The learning process in our schools must be structured to prepare the next generation for the challenges of the environment they are going to live in, not tie them to the word of their forefathers, except, of course, as lessons in history. The products of our school system should embody excellence, capacity for independent thinking, and, of course, be made to appreciate that education is only valuable when it is applied to a higher objective. Professor Ote at 60 remains a shining light and a brilliant example of what we are capable of becoming when leadership is driven by the commitment to make an impact. I'm immensely proud of what she has achieved in her long career, but even then, I know that her best years are still ahead. As the governor of Abia State, where she hails from, I often find myself under a lot of pressure to build systems and institutions that will produce more Aroma Otes in Abia State. This is partly the reason we have continued to commit the largest share of our annual budget to the education sector. For the past 2 consecutive years, thank you. For the past 2 consecutive years, 20% of our budgetary provision has gone to the education sector, and we are likely going to remain on that route for the foreseeable future. We have also made education free and compulsory in the whole state. This has resulted in a spike in enrollment, which more than doubled in 3 months. In fact, we had our ESCO yesterday, every Monday, and when we were looking at the numbers, we found that between July and middle of October 2025, that enrollment had increased by 100%. We recently recruited more than 5,000 teachers for the public school systems, and preparations are in place to recruit another batch of 4,000 teachers. We're also committing enormous resources to infrastructure upgrades, security of pupils and teachers, and welfare packages to keep the staff motivated. At the tertiary levels, we are also making diligent efforts to support the holistic development of our students. In the light of the competitive nature of the 21st century environment, the focus in our tertiary institutions has shifted from producing graduates that will be dependent on the system for survival to building leaders who will shape the future of our industries. Another priority area in our governance outlook is healthcare delivery, because it is tied to our broad program of human capital development. Leaning on the 2001 Abuja Declaration, we have consistently set aside 15% of our projected annual public expenditure outlay to healthcare development. And I'm happy to report that the results are beginning to show, with improved access to healthcare for everyone, especially rural dwellers. The target is to have a properly equipped and staffed medical facility within a walking distance in all parts of the state. As a matter of fact, we started with the 200 primary healthcare centers that we just started redeveloping, fixing, and of course, putting the infrastructure in place and the human beings. And we continue functionalizing them one after the other. I think at the last count, we've functionalized over 100, and we'll continue until we have 200 working and we'll take the next 200 until we have retrofitted the 948 primary healthcare centers in the state. My expectation will be that all of us will live here with a new consciousness and a resolute commitment to model excellence in our individual undertakings. May I also encourage us to get copies of Professor Ote's book and digest the important lessons it holds in our sustainable wealth creation through knowledge of the capital market and the new leadership paradigm it invites us to. The truth is that we have stayed in the difficult place of mediocrity for too long. At 65, we should be able to stand firmly on our feet and march forward in an unyielding resolve to pay whatever price is required to actualize the great destiny that our nation has called us to. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me thank you for listening, and thank you, my sister Aroma, for inviting me. God bless you.
Let's appreciate this amazing governor, ladies and gentlemen. So, Your Excellency, you'll be stepping down. There's a bookshelf over there. Ushers will be standing. They will bring out copies of the book to you and to everybody in front, and then there'll be a photograph here. But you will give to everybody seated in front.
Can you please bring the books so that while the minister is here, he can just take a picture with the books? So somebody please bring the books.
Let me recognize and welcome here my governor, the governor of Abia State, Dr. Alex Chioma Oti. I welcome you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.